Hey, welcome everybody to Three Dimensions of Values-Based Investing, Avoid, Embrace, Engage. It is well, depending on what time zone you're in. It's 2:01 where I am. We're going to get started at 2:02. Just give people another moment or two to join in that are probably getting their lunch together, and we'll kick it off here momentarily. Super glad that you're all here and joining us. Okay, we are actually at 2:02, so if it's okay with you, Jason, I'm going to go ahead and get us started here.
Sounds good.
Cool. Well, welcome and thanks for joining us for Three Dimensions of Values-Based Investing. Today, our special guest speaker is Jason Myhre from Eventide Asset Management. Jason and I have been building up to this point. We've done two prior webinars. Some of you may or may not have been here for the first two. The very first one we did together was called Timeless Truths of Investing. And then the last one was called The Power of Investing to Change the World. Those were both awesome presentations. And if you didn't get to see them, I'd encourage you to go to my website, www.matthewjholt.com. And you can view them there. The second one will be added within the next 24 hours. And this presentation is also being recorded. And so if you wanted to catch the replay, it will be on my website probably in the next 2 to 3 days. So before we get started with our presentation, I just wanted to do three quick things. First, I just want to introduce myself and a little bit about my background for those of you that don't know me. Second, I wanted to introduce my organization and how Eventide fits into the picture here. And then third, I wanted to lay out the flow just for today's presentation. Okay, so about me, my name is Matthew Holt, and I am first and foremost a disciple of Jesus Christ. I am a husband to my beautiful wife, Sarah, and a father to my two amazing children, Cornelia and Justice. I am a Bay Area native. I grew up in San Jose. So did my wife. That's where we met. San Jose, also known as the heart of Silicon Valley, right? Almost a year ago now, we moved our family. We felt God leading us out of California to the Kansas City, Missouri area so that we could be closer to a ministry that we serve that is near and dear to our hearts. So that was a big transition that we went through last year. So I'm also a financial advisor, surprise, surprise. I have been working in the financial services field since 2003. I spent my first 3 years as a licensed advisor at MetLife, basically helping corporate employees plan their group benefits and retirement strategies. My team served some of MetLife's largest group clients like Juniper Networks, Marvell Technologies, Cadence Design Systems, and Texas Instruments, just to name a few. Okay, so that's me. Who is Christian Wealth Management? Well, we are a national fraternity of financial advisors dedicated to values-based investing, and we offer comprehensive financial solutions from a biblical perspective. Eventide Asset Management is one of the solutions that we use for helping our clients align their investments with their values. And as you're going to hear in Jason's presentation, values-based investing, it rarely happens on accident. It's a very intentional approach to investing that's fueled by what I would say a conviction to add value to society rather than simply extracting it for the sake of profit. And I think that's what we typically all hear about on Wall Street and in the market. Maximize the profit and at whatever means necessary. And that's kind of the mantra. The best part about all of this is that asset managers like Eventide that are doing values-based investing, they make it super easy, very rewarding, and very impactful. And you're going to learn about that today. Okay, so Jason's presentation, the lay of the land, just laying it out here. We're going to get started in a moment. Jason's presentation will be about 30 minutes long, and then there's going to be time for Q&A at the end. The Q&A will be all done through the chat function on Zoom. So if you have a question, you can wait till the end. You can type it in as we're going through so you don't forget it. But please use that and type your questions in, and then we'll make sure and answer all of them at the end. My contact information is going to be shown on the final slide of the presentation. But if you must leave early, you can reach out to me at Matthew, with 2 T's, not one, Matthew@christianwm.com, or you can visit my website, www.matthewjholt.com. Okay, so now without further ado, I want to turn it over to Jason Myhre, and he will be taking us through this amazing presentation. Jason.
Thanks so much, Matt. Good to do another webinar with you. Want to say a warm hello to all of you that are joining in for a topic that I love, values-based investing. So just before jumping in, I'll do a brief self-introduction so that you know who you're listening to. So I'm Jason, very nice to meet you. I am a managing partner of a company called Eventide. We are based in Boston. Our specialty is in values-based investing, provided from a biblical worldview. My day-to-day work is in an area we call advocacy, where I am an advocate for incorporating your values into all of your decisions that you make in investing, which is what this topic is about. And with that, we will formally dive in. So what I want to do here at the start is just get you thinking about investing. So what I want you to do is to kind of just call investing to your mind and look up into your brain and look at the images that play on that kind of movie, that movie reel that goes across your mind. What sorts of images do you see associated with investing? I think a lot of people see images like these. So account statements, streaming ticker symbols, talking heads on some news program reporting on the latest breaking news in the market. It's up, it's down, it's flat. There's a lot of energy behind that. People will see charts with zigzagging lines, or you may think about Wall Street and all of its traders, on the stock exchange shouting orders over the den of noise there. And many like images. I call all of these images the financial machinery that surrounds investing today. And this is a part of the deal, right? But many of us don't give a lot of consideration as to what's happening behind these images, where our money is going, where the returns are coming from. Here is the way that one person puts it. This is William Cavanaugh. I've gotten to know him a little bit. He's a professor at DePaul. And he says this: retirement accounts tend to just go into mutual funds, so some investment product. Whereas an investor, not only do I not have any idea how the companies that I have stock in are being operated, I don't even know what companies I have stock in. Have you ever thought about investing and just wondered, what is behind the scenes? Where's my money going? What are the companies that I own here? Where are the profits coming from? What are the products and the services and the business activities that are generating the returns? And how do I feel about all of that from the place of values and beliefs and commitments in life? A lot of people don't know. There's this sense of unease that maybe their money is a little bit disconnected from the things that they consider important in life. To state the obvious, all of us have values. And our values, in many ways, if we reflect on it, really define who we are as people, right? Our values drive all of the important decisions that we make in life. So the kind of friends that we make, the kind of careers that we pursue, who we choose as a spouse, how we parent our children, the kinds of causes that we support. And life feels complete and full whenever those decisions are made on the basis of our values. And so what I want us to consider here is, how do we connect what we're doing in investing with our values and let our values drive that decision-making process? So as we go through this, I'm going to talk about how we take this stuff, the stuff that we value, and allow that to drive our investment decisions. And I think the best way to do this is to actually just introduce you to a family, to talk about their values, and to show how those values intersect with the world of investing. So this should be a fun way for us to consider the topic. I want to introduce you to the Schwartz family. So this is Blake Schwartz on the right, and he is a Presbyterian minister who lives in Dallas, Texas. I know him personally, and he's married to Julia, shown here, and they have 3 kids. This is Alice Arthur, who's 4, Margaret, age 6, and Nathaniel, age 1. So Blake's story of investing actually begins at a very young age. Here he is with his grandmother. He's the young man shown in the photo. And Blake didn't get to know his grandmother very well. He doesn't remember her very well because she passed away when he was just in the 3rd grade, actually after suffering from lung cancer as a result of tobacco smoking. A very sad story. Before she passed, she established a trust fund investment account for Blake, a trust fund that he was to receive when he turned 18 years old. So he grows up, he turns 18, he receives this trust fund. And as he is looking at the financial statements of this trust fund, he was greatly dismayed and disturbed to discover that actually 80% of the holdings of this trust fund were invested in a company called the Altria Group, showing you their stock certificate here. I don't know if that company rings a bell for you, but the Altria Group is actually a tobacco company. In fact, it's the very tobacco company that his grandmother was a customer of that ultimately ended up taking her life. And Blake was stunned. He was recounting to me to discover this, and he went to his parents with the account statements and showed them. And his basic response was, "Can you believe this is the company that's in this trust fund? This is the company that killed grandma." Those were his words. And so this is a very, very sobering story. I don't enjoy talking about it, but it highlights something very important, and that's this. When we invest, we are actually investing in companies. So our money will go with companies. In exchange, we will get ownership in those companies. This ownership is what gives us the rights to receive any of the profits and the growth that come from investing, which is, of course, why we're investing. But the fact that these profits and growth are coming from businesses highlights why our values matter. This can be something very good, very positive, and I'm going to talk about that. But it can also be a hidden source of conflict in our life where we're profiting from things that go against our values, as in the case of what I shared with you about the Schwartz family. So this introduces the first dimension of values-based investing that I want to talk about. It's called avoid. And it looks like this. There are these questions we can ask. We can say, okay, well, since investing is owning companies, are there any kinds of companies I do not want to own? Are there things that I just wouldn't feel good about participating in? What are my non-negotiables? Where would I draw the line? What are the things that I simply cannot, in good conscience, take part in? And there's actually a host of problem areas that we can come into in investing. These are some of the ones that I hear most commonly brought up. So things like profits that come from abortion or alcohol, animal cruelty, environmentally irresponsible actions, gambling, pornography, predatory lending, tobacco, as we saw in the case of Blake, vanity and luxury products, violent video gaming, weaponry, and the list can go on. So as you look at this list, these are things that you can express your values on and say, you know what? I want to grow my money, but I want to make sure that I'm not growing it from things that violate my conscience or that go against the values that I hold dear. And so this is a very personal choice. So as you look at some of the things on this list, you can actually express a conviction about things that you want to avoid. And so that's what this first dimension is about, is you can actually choose not to own companies that do not align with your values. That's called avoid. And that's the first dimension of values-based investing. But it doesn't stop there. I want to introduce you to the second one. And I want to go back to the story of the Schwartz family. So Blake and Julia had their first child, Britton, a boy who is shown here. And Britton was born with a tragic inherited disease called spinal muscular atrophy type 1, or SMA, if you've ever heard of it. SMA is a rare disease, and it's commonly referred to as floppy baby syndrome because babies that are born with SMA are limp and floppy at birth, such as depicted in this illustration here. It's the reason that Britton is shown lying down in his baby photo. And it's a genetic disease. And so what happens is your genetic code is broken where you are not able to produce a necessary protein that all of us have. And it's a protein called survival motor neuron. And this motor neuron is responsible for muscle development. And so what happens is because the body doesn't have the ability to produce this protein, the gene is missing there or broken, the muscles will atrophy, it's a muscle atrophy disease. And so muscle tone will degrade from birth, and it just gets worse. And so what happens is eventually children with SMA will lose the ability to breathe and to pump blood, which are both muscle functions. And so they typically die at a young age. Obviously, Blake and Julia were heartbroken to have received this diagnosis on their first child. They sought the world over for any treatment that would save Britton's life. Unfortunately, at the time, there were no treatments available for SMA. It was a very unknown disease. And the chance of making it to adulthood was basically 0%. And the chance of even making it to age 2 was just 20%. And Britton ended up passing away when he was just 8 months old. A few years later, they had their third child, Alice Arthur. Unimaginably, Alice Arthur was also diagnosed with the same disease. It was actually a 1 in 4 chance based on the genes of the parents. And so another heartbreaker here, but this time the story was different. In just those short years that had transpired, there was now a treatment for SMA. In fact, there were 2. And here Alice Arthur is on an airplane headed to the Ohio State University, where she would be the 13th baby to be enrolled in a new treatment for SMA that's called a gene therapy. Gene therapy is a new innovation in the world of biotechnology that to me sounds a lot like science fiction, as is shown with this image here. Essentially, what gene therapy does is you identify the root cause for the disease, the genetic disorder, and you actually deliver a healthy copy of the gene to the cells that need it, effectively curing the disease at a root cause level. So as I said, sounds a lot like science fiction. In the case of the gene therapy for SMA, it delivers the gene that's needed to code for that missing protein, survival motor neuron. So you deliver this gene, it fixes the genetic code at that root cause level, enabling the body to start producing that protein on its own, effectively enabling the muscles to start developing in a healthy way, and importantly, ensuring survival. Alice Arthur received this treatment and it worked. So I showed you a picture of the family earlier. Here she is. She's now a healthy 4-year-old girl who is learning to read. She would not be here had it not been for this treatment. As I said, the chance of making it to age 2 was just 20% prior to this therapy. As I spoke with the Schwartz family about the importance of investing, they said this. This is from Blake. As my eyes have been opened to God's redemptive purposes in the world and what he's doing, I've seen how investing can change people's lives. Now, why would he say that? What is it about investing that intersected with their story? Well, I want to go back to this diagram that I showed you, which is just the schematic of what's happening when we invest. And what he's referring to is this dimension of investing, supplying capital to businesses. When we invest, we are supporting businesses in their growth. Do you know the reason that there was a treatment for Alice Arthur when there was none for Britton? It's actually investors who had the heart and the capital to see it accomplished. And this is, to me, the very exciting dimension of investing. There is a positive impact opportunity where we can connect the dollars we're investing with stories that are blessing the lives of others. And certainly, I think you can see this in the case of Blake and Julia. And they said that investing, in fact, they've seen the way in which it can change people's lives. And without a doubt, it certainly changed theirs. And so this is the second dimension of values-based investing, called embrace. And this is to take a step away from the negatives and to move toward the positives and to say, you know, what kind of companies would I feel proud to own? What kinds of companies would I be really excited about owning and supporting, helping to advance? What kinds of companies truly are serving society and human flourishing? At my company, I refer to this as investing that makes the world rejoice. And it starts by just thinking big picture and to say, excuse me, where can I invest my money to grow it? And at the same time, intersect with something that is supporting human flourishing, something that's helping others. And there's actually a number of spaces that intersect right there between growth and human flourishing. And you can see, for example, pediatric and orphan diseases. This is exactly what the gene therapy was to treat Alice Arthur. And you can see a number of other positive spaces here, some very high impact, such as precision oncology, but also many other things like clean energy, things like cybersecurity, home improvement, the next generation of transportation, supply chain efficiency, and many other spaces. After identifying these big picture themes, you can then look at companies in more detail and say, okay, well, how do I find the best companies within those spaces? And so you can ask questions about how they're treating customers, employees, suppliers, communities, the environment, and wider society. So here are some questions to get you thinking. Is this company meeting an important human need? Are customers delighted? Do employees love their jobs? Are suppliers valued as strategic partners? Are communities better off for the company's presence? Is the environment being cared for and protected? And if we can answer yes to these questions, then we have a good confidence that we're investing in companies that we can feel proud to own. And so this is a little bit about the embrace dimension, which is all about seeking out and owning companies that align with, express, reflect our values. And finally, we come to the third dimension, which is called engage. So once you invest in a company, the work is not done. You're now an owner of the company. And so there's a way to actually use that ownership power that you now have, that voice within the company, to actually help companies improve and to continue on a path of excellence and to create even more value in the world. This is something that asset managers do on behalf of you, the investor, or have the opportunity to do. So this is something we do at my company. And there's a variety of ways this is done. Close partnerships with the management teams, so building relationships there, actively voting on company issues. These are called proxy votes, and doing that according to values. And then looking for opportunities to engage companies if we see areas for improvement. And I'm going to share an example about that with you in a few moments. So engage is all about engaging with companies to advocate for even more positive change. So avoid, embrace, engage. Now, we're not quite done because the question is always this. What about performance? How is this going to affect my ability to grow my money, which is why I'm investing in the first place? This is a very good question. Here's the way that somebody asked me this question recently. This was after a webinar like this. They said, hey, I appreciate the values-based investing point, but can we both agree that profitability is a core requirement? We can't just rely on good feelings to drive our investment decisions, right? This is an honest question, and I think it deserves a good response. So what I want to do is I want to address the performance implications of investing with your values. And I'm going to do that by talking about avoid, embrace, and engage. So let's talk about this first one, the avoid dimension. How does that affect performance? Okay, so what I want you to do is just imagine that you wanted to invest in the S&P 500, very big, broad basket of companies, but you're a sensitive conscience and you want to avoid over 70 areas of ethical concern. So I showed you that list earlier of the negatives, and there was about a dozen things on the list. So here we're talking about 70. So let's say you have so many issues that you want to avoid, but you want to invest in the S&P 500. So what would happen if you invested in the S&P 500 while removing those 70 areas of ethical concern? What would be the performance result? Well, the result would be you get essentially the S&P 500 in terms of performance. So the yellow line shows you the returns of the S&P 500, just unscreened, the regular old S&P 500. The blue shows you the S&P 500 with those 70 ethical exclusions applied, avoiding all those areas of concern. This is 20 years of a back test, and you can see that coincidentally, it achieved the exact same result down to 2 decimal places. Now, you can look at it, and if you slice different sections of time, let's say 2009 to 2015, you might say, wow, values are outperforming. Or from 2015 to 2020, you might say, oh, it's costing me. My values are costing me, right? But if you look at it on a long time horizon, hopefully you'll agree with me that this should not be a huge concern for us, this negative dimension, avoid. I don't think that it helps you a whole lot, but I don't think that it hurts you a whole lot either. I think the effect of exclusionary screening is rather de minimis. Here's what one person says at Barron's, a leading financial magazine. She says, for many years, one second, I have to move my video. For many years, most investors argued that it was impossible to reconcile personal values with a successful investment portfolio. But decades of research, just showed you one example, not to mention investment performance, so real investments, have slowly eroded that notion. And I would agree with her here. I don't think that we should be overly concerned about our values costing us in this avoid dimension. What about embrace? How does that affect performance? Well, here, I like to say that what's right is also smart. And what I mean by this is I actually think bringing your values and bringing an ethical perspective to investing can actually help you when you think about the positives. And I want to just illustrate that for you. So I showed you earlier this diagram showing you the relationships that are connected to a business. So this would be customers, employees, suppliers, communities, the environment, and society. These are called stakeholders. Here you are at the top as a shareholder, an investor. So what I want to do is just look at how values intersect. So what I want to do is I want to look at what happens when a business has a negative relationship with these groups. How does that affect investors? And what happens when a business has a positive relationship with these groups? How does that affect investors? So let's look at the extreme negative. So when a business cuts back on services or product quality to save costs or to boost margins, how do customers respond? Well, I think if you're like me, you hate it. And so oftentimes customers will walk away from businesses like this. They'll tell other people to steer clear. So that's not going to be good for investors. When a business treats employees as costs to be minimized, how do employees feel? They hate it. So they check out while they're at work, they invest the bare minimum, and they might start looking for another job. That's not going to be good for investors. When a business treats suppliers harshly, driving hard financial bargains and having a very short-term mindset, the suppliers, they might meet expectations for the business, but that's about it. When a business disregards the communities it operates in, the communities can come to see that business as a foreign corporation in their community, kind of a curse in the community. And they will look for other businesses to patronize instead. When a business exploits the environment, they're obviously exhausting the productive capacities upon which they depend. It's kind of long run. In the short run, though, they can face litigation, fines, potentially environmental catastrophes, which can destroy shareholder value. And when a business harms society, the world is made worse. But the business can also draw criticism, ire, condemnation. They can face boycotts, divestment, regulation, and all of these things can end up hurting investors. Now, I realize this is a very extreme, bleak picture, but what it demonstrates is that things that we would consider to be ethical, they do have a real material impact on performance. Let me show you the positive. When a business channels its creativity into improving value for customers, it delights customers. And so they become loyal patrons of that business. They start to tell their friends and family about that business. When a business treats employees as human beings and view them as really assets to the business, people to be invested in, to maximize, the employees will flourish. They'll love their job. They will invest their passion, their creativity into the mission of the business. It's very powerful. I think we all know firsthand what that's like. When a business values suppliers as long-term strategic partners, the suppliers will actually look for ways to help that business succeed. For example, in giving the business first dibs on limited premium items that they may have available. When a business invests in the local community can come to see that business as a favorite local business, and they will actually go out of their way, sometimes driving across town, to support that business. When a business cares for and preserves the environment flourishes, and the environment is there to sustain the business again and again and again. And you can think about businesses like Patagonia or Ben & Jerry's, who have been recognized for their environmental stewardship and how much that has helped their brand reputation. They've actually grown in mind share in the minds of customers as a result of just simply taking good care of the environment. And finally, when a business adds value to society, the world is made better. So that's great, but the business can also win praise and admiration, awards and recognition, and oftentimes market share. So here again, this is an extremely positive example, but it illustrates the way in which values play a real role in the success of a business long-term. We call this Business 360 because it's a way of looking at the complete picture of a business, not just looking at the balance sheet and the numbers. So if you're interested in ideas like this, I want to share a couple of books that I really like. Here is a really excellent book that demonstrates the relationship between serving customers and the bottom line financial performance of a business. And here is an excellent book making the case for employees. Serving employees is serving the bottom line of business. Here's a quote from a professor at the University of Virginia who says this: business ethics shouldn't be an oxymoron. It should be two words that are redundant to each other. Thinking about stakeholders is thinking about business. It's smart. And thinking about stakeholders is thinking about ethics. It's right. It comes to the same thing. This is why I like to say what's right is also smart. I think that this embrace dimension can be a help as we invest. And finally, engage. How does engage affect performance? Well, these engagements are very custom and specific to each business. So there's not a really well quantified data source to summarize the performance of engage. So what I thought I'd do is I'd just share with you a very brief example of what these engagements look like, and you can think through how this would affect performance. So this is a real example. A number of years ago, my company invested in a big retail company. Won't mention any names here. But as we were examining this retail company, we began looking at their customer finance arm. So as you may know, big retail companies will often have a branded credit card that you can apply for as a customer in order to make purchases that earn in-store credit. So rewards and discounts and things like that. We're hopefully all familiar with this. So we began looking at this credit card. And the thing that jumped out is their interest rate seemed really high to us. In fact, it was so high that we began doing some soul searching and just asking questions of like, what is a fair interest rate to charge customers using credit? At a certain point, I think we would all agree that credit can be a useful tool to purchase items, but at a certain point, it can also become kind of a trap that we can fall into. And it's like a pit that's very difficult to climb out of, because those high interest rates, they can compound, and it can be the cycle that's very difficult to get out of. Ultimately, we concluded that this credit card rate was just too high, that it was in fact like that pit that people can fall into. So what do you do? Well, we decided to engage the company rather than just sell and move on. And we brought this to their attention, and we did so in a very humble way. We were not trying to be, activist investors pointing out all their misdeeds, but rather we were investors and we wanted to remain investors. And so we just brought this to their attention. And because of the posture of our approach, we gained a listening ear. And the company, over a series of conversations, was gradually persuaded by our view, and they decided to terminate the relationship with the credit card vendor they were using and to open a new credit card vendor relationship with a vendor whose interest rates were well within the bounds of the fair and ethical. And both we and the company looked at that engagement and said, you know what, this was really positive. We think that it improved the value proposition to customers making purchases on credit, and it strengthened that business for the long haul. And little improvements like that, I think, can help the long-term performance of a business over the long haul. And hopefully you can see the way in which that could work out. So I think the engaged dimension can be also positive for performance. In summary, I think values-based investing offers 3 benefits. Number 1, it enables you to pursue integrity in your life in the area of your investments by investing in companies that create blessing and by avoiding companies that cause harm. It can enable you to create impact as you direct your dollars to advance the global common good, all the while still seeking out performance as you're partnering with companies that prosper by serving well the needs of others. I think our values do make a difference when we invest, and hopefully I've opened your mind to this possibility. I'm going to leave you with this quote from the New York Times. I saw this last year, and I just like the way that they talked about values-based investing. They said this: try thinking about it this way. Living your values in every way as best you can often delivers a positive emotional return. So any realignment of your portfolio can offer more value than you think. If you're like me, financial value is not the only thing that matters to me. I actually really value getting to live out my values in the decisions that I make in life. And so this is one of the ways that values-based investing cannot be measured purely on the basis of return. It has to do with feeling the peace of conscience, knowing that you're using your money in ways that reflect your values. And I really like it. So hopefully this has been a good introduction for you. I'm going to welcome Matt back on the call, and we would be happy to take any questions that you might have on this topic.
Thank you, Jason. That was awesome. Really, really good. Very powerful stuff. And yeah, I hope our audience has some questions brewing here. I don't see any in the comment box yet, but we're going to wait a moment or two. Hopefully we can get those typed in. Okay, we got one here. Okay, so from, I don't know if I'm supposed to say the names here. I think I can say first name. Should be fine, right?
Up to you. These are your people. So
right. I'm gonna put them on blast. Okay, Dewey asks, how can investors audit companies beyond the social financial aspect to see true transparency to make a sound decision in the evaluation process? Thanks. Jason, can you answer that question for us? I think that's probably.
It's a good one. It's a really good one. So I'll just offer a few comments. So the first thing that I think is helpful is just when you're investing in something like a mutual fund or an exchange traded fund, what's happening there is you've delegated the decision making to someone else, right? You could, if you wanted to, open a stock account and pick companies for yourself. But most of us feel like we don't have the time, interest, or skill to do that. So what we do is we outsource that to an investment product, something like a mutual fund or an exchange traded fund. And Matt, for example, is the one who is choosing those investments on behalf of you, his client. And so what you're doing is you've delegated that responsibility. And so what's really important is that you've delegated that responsibility to someone who understands your values and is trying to connect you with investments that align with what you care about. You're obviously caring about growing your money, but also reflecting your values in that decision process. Now, the question you've asked is, how do you know that the values piece is being executed well and correctly, right? So there's a couple of ways. The first way is that in the prospectus of an investment, so every investment has this paper document called a prospectus, there's a section for values-based investing that actually spells out what are the values that the asset manager is committing to when they're choosing companies. And so that's kind of a brand promise that the asset manager is making. So that's one way that you can sort of know what are the values that are guiding the decision making here. And so you can see whether or not those reflect your values. But there actually is, even on top of that, an actual audit process that that you can use. And so Matt can certainly speak to this, but there's a couple of tools that exist in the marketplace that actually screen the investment holdings that you have to see whether or not there are any issues in those portfolios that conflict with your values. And so one is called Evaluator, another is called Inspire Insight. There may be others, Matt, that you know about, but you can actually work with your financial advisor and do basically a scan. It's not 100% perfect, but it's a very good window into what's happening there.
Yeah.
And any issues that pop up can then be chased down with investment managers to try to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question, Dewey. Anybody can, Inspire Insight, I know is free. I think Evaluator, I don't know if they're moving to like a free model, but I think it's still subscription based. But you can go to inspireinsight.com. I know that they've opened that up. They have a free version, and I think they have I believe they have a paid version also. But you can type in any ticker, so any company, any mutual fund, any ETF, and you can kind of learn, what the company is engaged in. And it shows positive things too, which I really appreciate. It's not just showing you the things that you might want to screen out. If you had like a statement, you wanted to have your 401k or your IRA audited, it's a little more work. So I could always, you could send it to me and I could do the screening for you. It does take a little bit more time when you've got multiple positions in your account. So good question, Dewey. Thank you. We just had another one come in from Derek. Inspire Insight Pro is the paid version. Okay, awesome. Yes, so that's good to know. So there is a paid version and then there is a free version. So the paid version just gives you, I believe, more in-depth information about each company and each fund. Thank you, Derek. Dewey has another question. Oh, great insight. Thanks. Do you think as an investor, you should connect with multiple key stakeholders within the organization to get a holistic picture of the health of the company? Wow. I am going to pass that one on to Jason because that's right up,
This is where I think you don't need to, as an investor, this is my opinion, you don't need to do that as an investor if you have delegated that responsibility to someone you trust. So I walked through that stakeholder process of the 6 different groups: customers, employees, suppliers, communities, the environment, society. That's what we're doing at my company. So we're doing that work on behalf of our investors and trying to invest in companies that are adding value or creating value for all those groups. So that's that part is something that, I mean, you could try to audit that as well. But I think the best thing that you could do is in that step of delegating the responsibility to someone else, that you feel really confident that they're going to put your values into practice in a way that you would feel good about. The analogy that I give here is of hiring a nanny. So if you were looking to hire a nanny to parent your children while you were at work, or if there were times of the day where you needed their help, what you're doing is you're outsourcing your parenting to someone else, right? So how would you choose a nanny? You would choose a nanny who shared your parenting values, right? Who would parent just like you would parent if you were right there with your kids in that moment of the day.
Hmm.
And I think in a similar way, what we're doing when we're investing is we're hiring someone else to choose our investments. And this is a great convenience for our life, right? We don't have to look at stocks or get to know companies or learn how to analyze companies and worry about the ups and downs of the market, things like that. It's a good service. But what happens is that many people just hire an asset manager who's really only committed to finding profitable companies, and that's it. What values-based investing does is it's saying, hey, look, we have that mandate of trying to generate profit, but we are going to be careful about the kinds of profits we pursue, the kinds of companies we're investing in. So that's the innovation with values-based investing. Is it's saying we have two mandates. We have the profit mandate. We also have the values mandate. So that's just where it's really critical to choose your investment manager wisely. And I think a financial advisor who shares your values is another step in that process. So if you use a financial advisor, you want to find one who shares your values. Communicate your values to that person so that they can then find asset managers who are going to uphold the values across those different events. So I wish investing were easier and more transparent. Your questions are excellent, and I really like the way you're thinking. So hopefully, what I've said here is of some help.
Yeah, and that's a really good answer. Yeah, thanks, Dewey. We have a little more time left, so if you're thinking, gosh, this is something that I don't know the answer to, and it's okay even if it's not on the presentation. Maybe you just have a general financial question. Would be happy to answer that as well. But we'll give it another couple minutes here, and then we'll wrap up. What kind of questions do you get typically here, Jason, on these presentations that you think are noteworthy?
Yeah. Typically when I do one of these presentations, we don't cover the performance piece. So that's always the first question that comes up.
Right.
Actually, one question that does come up pretty regular is people sort of get the profit dimension of investing, but they're a little skeptical about how their investment dollars actually impact companies on the other end of the line.
Mm-hmm.
So they're mainly thinking about it as profiting, but shaping the world, so to speak, is something that a lot of people have a hard time seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little detailed, so I won't go into it, but I actually do think that there is a real connection between the way we invest and how those companies are able to operate their business and succeed. So a couple of ways that happens is one, through the engaged dimension, right? So as an asset manager, when we're engaging with companies, we're expressing the values of our investors to the management teams of those companies. And we are voting the proxy votes to the board on behalf of our investors' values. And so those things are shaping the psychology of companies. And then in the aggregate, I think this is one of the exciting things to consider. When lots of values-based investors are pooling their money together and allocating that to businesses on the basis of values, it starts to actually change the marketplace of possibilities for businesses that are looking to launch or how businesses are operating. And so it takes a long time, I think, to steer the whole financial industry and the whole business community. But I'm excited about the possibility of people expressing these values decisions when they're placing capital, because it sends signals to the market for companies to behave with these high ethical standards. And so I think it's really exciting to think about the way that our money can indeed shape the world.
Yeah, that was really good. One other thing, a question I hear often, and I actually love to hear your answer on this one, Jason, since you guys are putting together these, you're putting together multiple mutual funds. Some people feel, well, if we're screening out things that don't align with our values, and as we saw, the list can get very long as far as
Yep.
things that we're screening, are there any good companies left, or are we limited to just a handful?
Yeah. I will say it does limit your choices, right? So if you're eliminating companies, that's obviously restricting your investment universe. It does, at my company, it does limit the universe quite a bit.
Mhm.
So, for example, it eliminates about half of the Russell. I think it's the Russell 1000. So that's the 1000 biggest companies. About half of them are gone. But I don't view that as a negative. I actually view that as a helpful step in getting toward the companies that you're really looking for, right? I have no interest in profiting from, let's say, the tobacco industry, things like that. Or pornography or what have you. Like, I don't want those profits. And so I view that avoid dimension as a helpful step toward what I do want, which is I want to partner with businesses that I can earn a return from and that I can know are just a value adding business in the world that are serving well the needs of others. And so for me, I don't really view it as a loss to eliminate companies in that way. I view it as a help. Again, this is a very personal choice. You have to be convicted in your own heart, in your own mind, that you want to go in this direction. And so I would ask you to just give it some consideration. But the thing I guess I would leave everybody with is kind of the last point I said, which was financial value is not the only thing that matters to me. And I think we have to really do some soul searching and say, how valuable are my values? Like, how important is this to me? And each person is going to land in a different place. For me, it matters, and I really like knowing that my money is working in harmony with my values in this way. But I don't want to force that on anybody else. And so this is a personal decision, and I think it's good to wrestle with it and to just be convicted in your own mind.
Yeah.
So Matt is obviously a great person to speak with as you're wrestling through convictions like these.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And these webinars we're like I said, we're going to do more of these in the future, but I wasn't even fully convinced about values-based investing when I first heard about it. I really I had to read, I had to get educated on this subject and just really dig into kind of the nuts and bolts of it. But as I did, I felt like I kind of came away with a way better understanding, deeper understanding than I had before. And that's what kind of changed my mind about it, or maybe it was my heart that changed. So it doesn't always happen overnight. And so, yeah, think about it, pray about it. And yeah, I think that's a great advice. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I think we can wrap up now. I just want to share a few things. Did you have anything else, Jason?
No, thank you.
Okay, cool. Well, I appreciate everybody that joined in for this. Please share your comments with me over email, direct message on LinkedIn. I'd really love to hear the things that you liked, the things that you didn't like, ways that we might improve these presentations in the future. As I said, we'll be doing another one, I'm sure, the next few months here. So no pressure on Jason and Eventide, but they're kind of in a good groove right now. And I feel like we're going to be getting something probably before the end of 2021, would you say?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. But anyways, thank you all for taking the time to be with us once again. Please reach out for any needs, great or small. I would be honored to help you align your investments with your values. And I also do complimentary consultations. So for anyone seeking to put together a more comprehensive strategy toward a specific goal, whether it be retirement, college education, general financial planning, those are all things that I can sit down and help you to think through and strategize on. So with that, we're going to wrap up, and we will see you all next time. Take care.